Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Elisa McCall, and I'm the Director of Conservation Outreach and a staff scientist at Polar Bears International. Welcome to Inspiring Action Storytelling for Polar Bear Conservation. We're so happy to have you here today, especially because it's such a fun time of year for us. We're really building up into polar bear season. It's kicking off already in Churchill, Manitoba, which we'll talk a little bit about. And this is a really fun way for us to kick off the season. So at Polar Bears International, we cover a lot of ground from research to policy to education. It's all powered by people like you, people who care about the species, its future, and its story. Stories have always been a fundamental way that humans connect, learn, and get inspired. Now, as a science based organization, our work is driven by numbers and facts and research that can feel a little boring, maybe, but it's the stories behind all of that that really spark the empathy, the inspiration, and the desire to act, which we really need to help protect this amazing species. So today we are going to give you a sneak peek behind some of the stories that we're working on. And I'm so excited to introduce our other panelists very quickly. Well, it's a little confusing. We've got two Aarons today. They're both wonderful. We have Aaron McNichol. Aaron is Polar Bears International Senior Manager of Communications. Hi, Aaron. You'll hear from Aaron shortly. And then we've got Aaron Blaise. So we're
The
using
other
full names
Aaron.
today. Hi, Aaron Blaise. So, Aaron Blaise is our special guest today. He is an Oscar nominated animator whose work you'll know from films like Brother Bear, which he directed, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and more. So, stick around to the end because we, of course, are going to give both panelists a good chance to talk. And then we are going to have a special showing of Aaron Blaise's new short film, Snow Bear, which is just incredible.
Very excited.
And yes, so excited. Thank you for being here, both of you. This is just
Thank
so much
you.
fun. Yes. And as a housekeeping note for our audience today, our chat is open. So please do use the Q&A. We would be thrilled to answer questions you have. Our team is monitoring the chat and they're going to feed them to me throughout and after, and there will be time for questions at the end. Okay, so before I pass it over, I just wanted to kind of selfishly share one example from my work about the importance of storytelling. So, again, we are celebrating conservation stories. And we celebrate polar bear conservation and accomplish it through films, but also, of course, innovative tools and projects. And from a scientist point of view, one tool that I work with a lot and used to work with a lot is tracking technology, so GPS locations. Without GPS and similar technology, we would have no idea what polar bears are up to out on the sea ice. We wouldn't understand their habitat needs, how they move, and how they're being impacted by a warming world. When using data for my research, it looks like this. I would get emails every few days from the callers on the bears out on the ice, and it would be a series of lat long. It's black and white, and to me this is kind of exciting. I was trained to read this sort of data. We can plug it into software we have and spit out different things, and as scientists we're like, this is great. We did our job. We're trained to keep it emotionless. We're told do not name these bears. They all have these numbers and keep it like that. And then scientists can wonder, well, why don't people get it? Why aren't people joining our cause? So as I started to work with Polar Bears International more and more, I came to see the immense value in storytelling and the importance of feeling the data, for adding context to these bears' journeys, for helping tell these stories that we're seeing in black and white, but tell them in real life. And we can see that very clearly when we do things with these sort of tracking data, particularly. So we have a bear tracker, for example, that you can see on our website. It's free to the public. And one particular bear really stood out to us over the years. So she used to be on the bear tracker. She first came to us as X33410, and we named her Ursula. And I wanted to compare this data is how we first came across this bear. And then we did do a 7-minute film years ago about Ursula. We're just going to show you 40-second clip today, but see the difference in how you feel between looking at these data and watching this short clip.
As it became colder and ice slowly started forming along the coast, Ursula and her cub headed north. A GPS collar allowed us to closely follow their movements. Ice formation in 2015 was particularly late, and it wasn't until the end of November that the ice was finally strong enough for Ursula to head out onto Hudson Bay with her growing cub. As I watched Ursula's track moving across the map, I thought about the challenges she was facing. Frigid temperatures, complete darkness, dodging aggressive males, sniffing out seals, all with the sea ice moving and drifting beneath her feet.
Okay, so that is the same bear using the same data, but telling the story in a different way. So I just really love that. You can, again, you can watch the full Ursula clip on YouTube if you're interested. Again, thank you for joining us today. Please do put any questions in that chat, and I'm going to pass it over to our wonderful Aaron McNichol for a deeper dive into conservation storytelling.
Thanks so much, Elisa. And as Elisa mentioned, I'm the Senior Manager of Communications at Polar Bears International, and I manage our website, our social media, our film and photo work. I work closely with Handcraft Creative, who produces our more polished pieces that we use in our communications. And just a little history of Polar Bears International. We were actually founded by a professional photographer named Dan Gurovich. So storytelling has really been at the core of who we are and what we've done since the beginning. He spent much of his career photographing polar bears and saw the changes to their environment and the challenges they were facing over the course of his career, and realized there's no organization dedicated to protecting a future for them. So because of this, we're incredibly lucky to have access to an amazing film and photo libraries that have spanned decades. And some of the content is from him and other professional photographers, like our longtime sponsor and friend, Dan Cox, who I'm sure you're seeing some of his photos right now. We also have a lot of assets from our staff and generous friends and professional photographers that have graciously donated their photos and videos for our use. And we're really lucky to have such an engaging and beloved animal as the polar bear to really rally behind. They really capture the attention and imagination. In that sense, it makes our job a little easier, but there's also a challenge in that for many people, polar bears feel so far away, geographically, emotionally, and even conceptually. But so it can really be difficult to connect an animal that most of us will never see in our lifetime in the wild, in a place that most of us will never be fortunate enough to visit. So that's really where storytelling can come in. And humans have used stories since the beginning of time to make sense of the natural world, to share knowledge, to solve problems. And it's how we've always connected to one another, to our surroundings, and how we've really found meaning. And actually, there's been a number of research studies that have shown that stories are not just entertainment, but they're actually part of how our brains process information. So stories can shape how we perceive, how we understand, how we remember, and how we act. And they help us organize experiences, communicate values, and build empathy. And empathy, as we know, is really at the heart of conservation. So it's really crucial for conservation because when people form emotional attachments to a landscape or a species, they're more likely to care for it. And that emotional connection is often what turns awareness into action. So like Elisa mentioned, storytelling can really help explain and share abstract issues, like, for example, melting sea ice, habitat loss, or population decline. And we can help connect these issues to people's lives through storytelling. It gives people a way to feel the impact and why this matters, rather than just trying to understand it intellectually. And so while bears are fortunately a really easy thing to connect to, it's equally important to share the stories of the people who work in conservation and those who live alongside polar bears as well. Wildlife conservation at its core is a human story. So when we highlight the people and the mission that allow them to share their dedication and their challenges and their hope, we really help audiences see the human heart within the science. And these stories make conservation personal. And we found that as the Arctic continues to change, it's really more important than ever to share the stories of those who live alongside polar bears and who are coexisting with polar bears. And one way PBI does this is not only by sharing the stories of our researchers, but also we recently published a peer-reviewed study on what we can learn from Indigenous communities and the knowledge they've gained on coexisting with polar bears and that they've passed through the generations through stories. So this is kind of a neat way that we're actually combining science with the power of storytelling. And this approach was well received with both in the Churchill community and the scientific community. And this method is actually now being used with belugas. So there is another project currently underway. And you're seeing there those who did this study, which KT Miller and Georgina Berg. So by sharing these human stories, we can not only share what's at stake, but we can also share what's possible. And we can turn these statistics into faces, we can put some emotion to the science, and turn these distant places into something that's deeply personal. And these stories can transcend cultural, linguistic, and generational barriers. And they really allow us to translate the complexity of ecology into something that everyone can relate to. And, stories of love and family and loss and resilience and even hope. So they really remind us that protecting polar bears isn't just about saving a species, but it's a collective effort in the courage and care of the people working to ensure a future for both where wildlife and humanity can thrive. So when audiences see the people behind the work, they can also begin to see themselves in it and be part of the story and see themselves as part of the solution. So with that in mind, as you're seeing the visuals here, PBI also works with a lot of other storytellers to help amplify these stories. We work with a lot of writers, journalists, filmmakers, news crews that want to tell the polar bear story and the conservation work that's being done to protect their future. So we work closely by helping these crews share the PBI story, our research, and the story of the bears in the regions where we work, and see how we might be able to work together. And I often help host these teams in the field. So some of the recent film crews and news crews we've worked with include CBS News, CBS Nightly News, the Associated Press, Michael Strahan and the Good Morning America crew, National Geographic, and countless more. So we're pretty fortunate that these teams really help us amplify this story. But whether it's through film, photography, writing, social media posts, or animation, these stories can really reach people who will likely never pick up a scientific report. And with that, I'd like to introduce our very special guest, Aaron Blaise, who has dedicated his career to telling the stories of our favorite animals through animation. And conservation is really at the core of a lot of his work. So we're very fortunate to have Aaron here and be working with him on his film. Before I pass it off, I just want to send a quick reminder that the Q&A is open, so please feel free to leave your questions.
Thank you, Aaron. I got to tell you, I'm absolutely beside myself. I'm so happy and honored to be here. Never in a million years did I think I'd be able to be part of what you guys are doing. I love I love telling stories. I love telling stories that get people to react. I mean, that's my business. I love getting people to have an emotional reaction because that's what we do as great storytellers, and especially having worked with Disney for so long. And when I was young, I wanted to work for National Geographic. That was my dream, was to be an illustrator for them and be involved in that world. And so this has been my little way of coming into your world and taking my storytelling and hopefully making a difference with it. So that makes me very excited. But I've got a little presentation I want to show and share with you guys. I guess I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is that right? I guess here. I'm going to do that. And I am going to hit this. And I think we're playing. Continue. Yes. Everything's playing well on your end. If you guys could give me a yes.
Looks good.
Great.
Looks great.
Awesome. Tech. We got to make sure the tech is working. So, this is my business. This is what we do. I've been an artist for over 45 years, a professional artist, but I've been an animator for 38 of those years. I never intended to be an animator when I started out. I I've just been always fascinated by the lives of the other beings that we share the planet with. I always call them our fellow Earthlings. Everyone thinks of Earthlings as humans, but the planet's full of other Earthlings other than humans, and that's how I've always seen it. And so I started out just wanting to depict in some form or another the natural world. I love drawing, painting, writing about the natural world, and specifically animals in general. And I don't care if they're little dormice all the way up to elephants. I love them. I see them, like I said, as fellow earthlings that I empathize with. And that's what I try to get into all of my work, whether it's paintings like you see here, because this is where I really started, or if it's storytelling and animation. I still try to do storytelling in my paintings, but you can get a lot more story in animation. and and so my goal has always been, when I'm doing my artwork like this, and what I've always been drawn to is the getting the audience, getting the viewer to feel that soul, to get them to feel that there is a sentient being behind those eyes, because there is. And obviously just the sheer beauty too, because we're just, the world we live in, if given the chance, is so incredibly beautiful and wonderful. And that's what I want to get into my work. And, and I want that beauty, that window to be the eyes of these characters that I create, these souls. And so, I started at Disney back in 1988, and I've had the pleasure of working on a lot of different films, whether it's The Lion King or Brother Bear or any of the other ones that we did through the 90s. Throughout my entire career, out of all the films that I've worked on, the most important rule that we've learned along the way is that story is absolutely number one. And the reason for that, the reason that story grabs us and grips us, whether it's 100,000 years ago, sitting, putting a story up on a cave wall or around a fire, or it's sitting in an IMAX theater nowadays, it's because a great story creates empathy for the audience. The audience can immerse themselves and get behind the characters that are on the screen and root for them and want them to succeed and get behind them and feel those emotional ups and downs and everything else that a great story, that journey takes you on. One of the things we try so hard to do, and one of our number one rules in animation, is that we want the audience to forget that they're looking at drawings. And that's what you got to remember. Especially for hand-drawn animation, you're just looking at a series of drawings. I just sat down, and for 2.5 years, I sat and drew pictures. But when you play those drawings back, they tell a story that hopefully the audience forgets that they're looking at drawings, and they become sucked into this story and they feel empathy. They get behind this lonely polar bear living in the Arctic, and they want him to succeed. Another great one that I always love bringing up is Dumbo. A great story pulls the audience in. We don't watch the characters from the outside. And like I said, if we do our job right, we become them. We empathize. We feel them. As Dumbo, none of us sitting here today has ever been a little elephant with giant ears tripping over its ears. But we have been cast out sometimes. We have been lonely. We have longed for the love of our mother. I don't care how old you are. We've all remember that. And so that's something that we empathize with. We try to get these stories into, we try to get these emotions into our stories, so that when our character is sad, their joys become our joys and their sadness becomes our sadness. And that's the empathy that makes storytelling so incredibly powerful. Action is inspired through empathy. I started out, when I created Snow Bear, I wanted to tell a story about loneliness. That was the key. I wanted to tap in to a universal emotion that I know everybody in the world, regardless of culture or language, has felt before, which is one of the reasons why I told this story with no dialogue. I wanted it to jump across cultural and language boundaries. So that I tried to create that empathy first, and then I brought in the environmental themes along with it to help elevate that and magnify the emotions in the story. Look, we absolutely need all of the data that's illustrated in a way that those of us who aren't scientists like myself can quickly understand, like these graphs. But it's hard to impact a viewer beyond the shock of the data. And it's like Elisa was showing earlier, her data sheets pale in comparison, or actually they don't even compare to the story to us laymen. I don't know how to read her data sheets, but I certainly reacted to that 40-second clip that she played. I was sad when the clip was over. I wanted to she sucked me in 40 seconds. I wanted to watch more of it. But that's the thing. So, the data is absolutely necessary, and things like these charts and graphs are absolutely needed. But people are far more likely to remember a compelling story than statistical data. It's just how we're wired, like Aaron was saying. As a matter of fact, I read a statistic. I read a statistic that did stick with me. That stories, people that are exposed to statistical data and stories, they're 22 times more likely to remember that story, which is amazing to me. I don't know how they got 22 times, but I still find that incredibly amazing. So in Snow Bear, I wanted the audience to empathize with a grown polar bear so that his loneliness becomes the viewer's loneliness. His joys become their joys, and his heartbreak becomes their heartbreak. So I start out with a polar bear wandering the vast expanse of the Arctic, and we see that he's lonely. We see that he's looking for friendship, companionship, anywhere he can. Polar bears live this lonely, solitary existence, many of them. And so out of desperation, out of that need, which many of us go through, he creates a snow bear to keep himself company. It's funny and it's tragic all at the same time. So we root for him, but we also feel sadness for him. And so when we get sucked in like that, then we feel even more emotional reaction, even more sadness when we see that the warming Arctic is starting to melt the only friend that he's ever had. And so we cry and we feel sadness when he feels the sadness of his polar bear friend or snow bear friend melting. And as his tears fall, our own tears will fill the void as well. And so when we feel that emotional impact, when we see our polar bear floating on an isolated iceberg in the middle of an iceless Arctic, in the puddle of what used to be his friend. And that is impactful. We feel that emotion, so that when he looks out across the ocean, an Arctic Ocean that should be full of ice, we feel the same impact he has when we see that there's no ice at all. So that with a story and empathetic character attached, the message of a warming planet, it's no longer just charts and graphs. It's emotional. And that is how we get reaction from people. That's how we spur people to action. That to me is powerful. And that, as filmmakers, storytellers, we have that power in our hands. And so when we can team up with scientists from places like Polar Bears International, we've got something that's extremely, extremely powerful. Every single image that we create, every story we tell, it's a seed. It's something that can grow empathy. And from empathy, that is where real change can grow, because we get this reaction from people. It's an emotional reaction. Elisa was saying earlier that, they're trained to keep, emotion out of it. But I'll guarantee you, every scientist that's gotten into the world that they get into has gotten into it because of their emotional reaction to want to save that world, to be a part of that world, to learn more about that world. Everything we do is based on an emotional reaction. And so our stories help elevate that. So with that, it's not just drawings, it's, whoops, sorry, let me bring that back. Anyway, it's not just drawings, it's actually bringing these characters to life in a way that sparks action. For me, it's incredibly exciting to be able to do that, to make a career of that, and to be here today to share it with you guys, and to be teamed up with Polar Bears International. And I'm even more excited to share my short film Snow Bear with you guys today. So with that, I'll let you guys take it. You know, when people ask me about storytelling and creating stories, I try to make it personal. I try to find the things inside me that I can relate to get into the story, to make it feel real. So Snow Bear is a story about a lonely polar bear living in the Arctic. He wants to make a friend and he's having trouble doing it. And so he decides he's going to make a snow bear to keep him company. And it's all the fun and joy that he has with his newfound snow bear friend. You know, the Arctic is a very unforgiving, harsh environment. It's tough. It's tough to get by. It's very sparsely populated. And so I just thought that was such a great environment to set this story in. And obviously polar bears, the biggest carnivores on the planet, big dramatic creatures, showing this emotional side to them, showing this loneliness. You know, yes, they're big and they're tough and they're carnivorous and they're bears, but they live this lonely life. And wanted to feel that emotion, that cold, the wind blowing, the ice, you know, blowing in your eyes. Those are the things that I want you to feel. And so, you know, in the film, you know, the environment really is, you know, there to help tell the story as much as the bear is. I've got an advantage in that I was trained as a painter first before I became an animator. And so I've carried those skills into my filmmaking. And so I love painting the backgrounds. I love doing the effects animation. I love doing the character animation, obviously. I like figuring out all the art direction, the color models, the design. And so I was really able to express myself as an artist and as a filmmaker all in one fell swoop. Snow Bear has no dialogue in it. And so I knew music was going to be extremely important. I didn't want to skimp on the music. And so the best composer I knew was Mark Mancina. We had a history together. And it was wonderful because in like 30 minutes he wrote back. He said, I saw it, I love it, I'd love to work on it. Yes, let's get on the phone and talking about how we might do it.
Because the tune doesn't really begin till 62.
And so Mark Mancina and Marlon Espino, you know, together they wrote something that it just blew me away. We were so happy when we got this music cut into the reel, and it sat so well with the film, and we couldn't have asked for a better score. You know, hand-drawn animation will not go away if we don't let it go away. And so I've decided, you know, that we're gonna put our money where our mouth is. And that was another inspiration behind making Snow Bear, in that we wanted to make something by hand. Yes, it was drawn on my monitor right here digitally, but it was all hand-drawn. Every frame, every shadow, every chunk of snow, everything you see was created by hand. Even though it's a short film, I really hope it has an impact on the audience. We live in a world that's fragile, and the inhabitants of this world, polar bears included, are impacted by what we do. And so we're hoping that this brings some kind of awareness that will hopefully inspire people. And I hope they walk away having
enjoyed something, even if in that little 10-minute window, something that's going to brighten their day and brighten their outlook on life. And I firmly believe this. I always say, go on out there and put some beauty back into the world. I feel like that's something that we should all be striving to do. And so with Snow Bear, I really do hope that we put some beauty back into the world.
Well, thank you, everyone. Isn't that just the most amazing video? I've had the great fortune to see it quite a few times, and it gets me every time. I've also shown my 6-year-old daughter quite a few times. She calls it the bear who needs a friend. She loves it. So
Awesome.
thank you so much for sharing that with us today, Aaron. We are so grateful for your partnership and
I am
collaboration.
honored beyond words to have been able to share it with all of you. I mean, what a dream to be able to make that film and then be able to share it with you guys. I mean, that doesn't get any better than that for me.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. So we do have a few questions, and please, there's still opportunity to put more questions in the chat if anybody has some. So get them in there, and we will, answer a few here. I think I would like to start with mentioning that Snow Bear has been making the rounds at film festivals, and you've been quite successful. And what an amazing way to kind of spread this messaging to broader audiences. And wondering if you could kind of update everyone on how that's going.
Yeah, so we finished Snow Bear in October of last year. And so ever since then, we did our first kind of screening of it in November of last year. And since then, we've been going all over the world, showing it at various film festivals. And we just got back a week and a half ago where Aaron was with us in Jackson, Wyoming, where we were at the Jackson Wild Film Festival, which is really wonderful for us because that film festival is primarily geared towards conservation and the plight of the planet, basically, and it's documentary filmmaking. And for us to be this little animated short film to be honored there is amazing. And the category that we were in, two categories. One was the Planet in Peril, where we won. Snow Bear won that category, and so we were very honored about that. I'm on an airplane in a couple of days back out to Los Angeles, where we're screening it again at the Chinese Theater, and I'll be doing a panel there. And we're making an Oscar run to see how we do. So it's getting out there, and the word is being spread. So hopefully, some of that love is going to come your way.
And that leads into our next question. How can people watch this or share it, or where can they look for it?
Well, one of the things, at the end of October, beginning of November, we're going to be in Churchill, and that just happens to be the same week that we're going to be putting Snow Bear out in the public for streaming. And so the first week of November, people will be able to stream Snow Bear, and it'll be open to everyone.
That's so exciting. Everyone will be very happy. We'll be helping spread the word too. And we have more information about Polar Bear Week as we wrap up here in a little bit, but we still have some time for more questions. This is a great question. It's how do we find the money for a full-length Ice Bear film to go out to theaters everywhere? Is that something you're thinking about?
Funny you should mention that. Funny you should mention that. Because I went away from filmmaking for a little while. I came back, made Snow Bear, and I got hooked. And being involved with you guys, for me, it's a whole new, filmmaking with a cause. It's something I want to do as I get older. And so I've really enjoyed the process of Snow Bear. And as a result of what we've done with it, I've gone off and I've written a prequel to Snow Bear called Polar, and it's a feature length. So we're trying to find ways of getting that funded, and we're hoping that Snow Bear can get in front of someone that can help us do that and throw more love towards Polar Bears International and the plight of polar bears in the world.
That's so exciting. I think you're well on your way. We're thrilled to see how that comes about too. And also in the same vein, after people watch Snow Bear, what are you hoping they might do?
Well, I'm
What can they
hoping
do?
that they take that call to action. They do, and they check out you guys, and that's one of the big things. That's one of the things that came out of this partnership with you guys is us. I love telling stories. I love moving people, and I love even more moving people to action and moving people to a cause. And that's why we love you guys so much and everything that you're doing, and why I think this partnership works so well is that we're hoping that I can do that emotional side of the data that we were talking about and get people to at least investigate. Most people, unless they've been living under a rock, know that we live on a planet that is warming. But I'm hoping that this kind of spurs that emotional reaction a little bit more, to investigate it a little bit more and see, the Arctic, some of these environments that are more environmentally sensitive to the warming planet than other areas, to find out more and maybe donate and help out.
Oh, we sure appreciate that. Oh, so we have a question about your time in Churchill. Aaron Blaise will be with us November 1st to 7th during Polar Bear Week in Churchill. So unfortunately not earlier than that, but we are just so grateful that you guys can come up this year. And so everyone knows, we will have live free events throughout the week, throughout Polar Bear Week. You can watch them on our website, polarbearsinternational.org. We're also very grateful to Aaron Blaise and Nick Birch. They are going into the local Churchill school and putting on multiple drawing workshops for the kids that day, which they're just so excited for. So thank you for that as well. And
Totally.
Aaron, I also wanted to ask you another question. So you've drawn so many different animals in so many
Yeah.
different places. And just curious if anything sticks out to you about polar bears in particular, or drawing the Arctic, or what you might like about it or find different about it.
Well, it's funny. I live in Florida. I grew up in Florida, and so for me, doing Arctic stuff is pretty funny. But I feel most at home, in those northern climates. I love all animals. I love all nature. I love all wildlife, all the different environments. But there's something about, you know, big carnivorous creatures like polar bears that just fascinate me, and they're dramatic and easy to fall in love with, right? And so, I love I love creating that imagery, but part of what drives me is to get into that world. It's an excuse to go to those places. When we made Brother Bear, we went all over Alaska. I went to Katmai. I went to McNeil River. I went to all these wonderful places. So I had the excuse to go see grizzly bears in the wild. And so this is my excuse to go to Churchill and see polar bears in the wild. So I'm creating my own tickets to go to these places. So it's great.
Well, it's working out great. We're so excited to have you. Oh, so we have another question here. And one more reminder, everyone, just if you have a question, put it right in the webinar chat here, type it out, and we'll be happy to get to it. And again, thank you everyone for joining. We've got one or two more questions here, and then we'll start a wrap up, but please do get them in. So we got a question about misconceptions about polar bears or Arctic climate. What do we need to correct, and what's the most effective narrative to do it? I'll speak on my behalf, and then Aaron Blaise, I'll pass it to you. I do think a misconception about polar bears in the Arctic that we do see come up more often than we would like is that it's too late to do anything, or people are powerless, or there's no need to take action. It is what it is. But we are here to say that is a misconception. That's not true. We have the tools, we have the solutions, we know exactly what the problem is in our warming world. We need to switch to cleaner energy resources like solar and wind, and we have all that technology. What we need is policy. We need leaders who care. We need to be voting for people that care about our future. And the narrative that we find is effective, and we work with social science as well to figure out how we can best talk to people about these things, because they're pretty heavy topics. But it is a narrative that just connects polar bears and people, and puts us like hand in paw. Whatever we do for polar bears now is good for ourselves in the future. And whatever we do for ourselves is good for polar bears. Our future is shared. There's a lot of gray area. It's not black or white, which is kind of ironic with the polar bear, but it's really not. The more we do now, the better we are in the future for both species. So we're really working to protect future generations of polar bears and people. And storytelling like this and getting people inspired based on the data is such a great way to do that. And Aaron, I want to give you a chance to respond to that as well, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I don't come at this as a scientist. I learned what I learned through books and reading and everything else like everyone else. But I mean, I don't even scratch the surface of knowledge compared to what you have. But one of the biggest misconceptions, so that being said, I think to myself, well, what can I do? I mean, as a single, I'm just one person. And before I started this film, it wasn't just what can I do as one person. I make cartoons for a living. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I do for a living. I make cartoons. What good is that? I mean, it entertains people. But then I started realizing I could tell a story that will move people, that can start a chain reaction. Every little thing that people do is the beginning. Like I was saying earlier in that talk, it's a seed, everything. And it doesn't matter how small of an action you think you're doing that can inspire somebody, it can provoke someone to do something. It creates reaction and it creates good. And so this little idea that came to me while I was washing my hair in the shower about a little polar bear in the Arctic that was lonely has grown into this. And here we are talking about it 8 years later or 9 years later, whatever it is. And we're doing something. And so it doesn't really matter, yes, you're one person, but that one thing that you do, no matter what it might be, even if it's $1 or some action, can spark good and do something good, great for the world.
Oh, I love that so much. One of the biggest things, actions we tell people of any age, just like storytelling kind of transcends, one action that transcends is just to talk about it. And that includes sharing stories, that includes sharing your love and inspiration and things like this. And the more we talk about it and make things kind of normalized publicly and let our friends and families and colleagues know what we care about, the more things are going to move in the right direction for us all. And really, people like you, Aaron, are just so important. And again, I just can't state enough how grateful we are that, I mean, you came up with this idea totally separately from us, but then that you connected with us. We're so excited to have you in Churchill. We're so excited for this film. It has been just
Oh
a
my.
wonderful journey. It's so much fun. And I also wanted to let people know, so Aaron mentioned that this film will be publicly available the week of Polar Bear Week, which is starts November 2nd, that Sunday, and goes throughout the week. And we will have live events all throughout the week from our new Tundra Buggy One EV. You can check out the schedule on our website, polarbearsinternational.org. We have multiple webcasts that anyone can join, and we are advertising particularly to teachers and students to show some of these webinars in their classes. You can join. Aaron's going to teach us how to draw a polar bear, amongst other things, and talk us through his processes. And we will be, also celebrating the release of the film. And the film, we are showing it in Churchill, actually. If anyone is there during Polar Bear Week, we will be showing it at the theater on November 3rd. Very excited for that. It's going to be a great turnout, I'm sure. But there's lots of ways to plug in schools. We are, especially at this time of year, so dedicated to bringing polar bears into the classrooms and into the living rooms of people around the world to build this love and build this empathy, like you talked about, which
I'm going to
is just
be
such a beautiful
drawing
thing.
and live streaming live polar bears in the wild. How cool is
Amazing.
that? I mean,
It's so cool.
What a dream. I'm a kid again. This is awesome.
Well, we can't wait. We're just so excited. I know we can't state it enough. So thank you so much for everything. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for showing this film. Our polar bear cams are already live in Churchill. Not all of them, but most of them. So you can tune in to explore.org, check out the Tundra Buggy Lodge cams and also the Cape cams at Cape Churchill. There are polar bears out there, but it's still a little bit early in the season. As we march through the weeks, there will be more and more polar bears marching toward the coast, and we'll have lots of great sights. And again, our new Tundra Buggy One EV will be out there in the coming weeks. There's more to come on that. Check out our website and follow our mailing list and our socials for more information there. But there will be more polar bears as we get closer to November and Aaron's visit to Churchill. We're so excited for that. And during Polar Bear Week, we are raising funds to support our coexistence effort. So this is helping people and polar bears live safely together, especially as polar bears spend more time on land in more places. So please do keep an eye out for that. Your generosity will help fund a lot of this work while supporting our other conservation efforts across the Arctic. And take a look for our Take Action Toolkit. We talked about a few things you can do to help us help polar bears today, but our toolkits are a great resource. They have all sorts of ideas to get involved in your schools, in your communities, and beyond to genuinely impact the future for polar bears and for people too. We will be sending the recording of this out. However, I will let you know it will not include the Snow Bear film piece because it's not public yet, but it will be public in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for
Very
that.
soon.
If you very, very soon. And if you want to know more about this beautiful film, you can check out snowbearshort.com. Also, my amazing team is just plugging links into the chat if you haven't noticed. So go into the chat
There
right
they
now, see
are.
all the Polar Bear Week links, Take Action Toolkit. We've got the snowbearshort.com, all sorts of great stuff to check out. And please do spread the word to friends and family that you watch Snow Bear today and to keep an eye out for it. It's so exciting. So thank you, Aaron Blaise. Thank you, Aaron McNichol, also, who's been here. Thank you so much for everyone's input on the importance and inspiring nature of storytelling today. How much fun. This was such a good conservation happy hour event. This was really great. Thank you for your time.
I
And thank
loved
you
it.
for the attendees. Oh, great. I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron. I can't wait to see you in person. I feel like we've been
Yeah,
talking. Yeah.
same here. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Elisa. It's been an honor to be part of this. And thank you for everyone I can see in the chat that's joined.
Yeah.
Beautiful, wonderful compliments. And I'm so glad that you guys enjoyed the film. And so thank you, thank you, thank you.
Incredible. Well, thanks for all the viewers today, and we will see you out on the tundra. Have a
Thank
great
you
rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.